You knew it was coming. For those of you who subscribe to my channel, you knew this smuggler was going to land in my demo fleet eventually, or maybe my personal fleet. So this is how this all went down. I recently bought a Niner Rip 9 RDO. And the reason I got that bike is because I had a Transition Sentinel that I really enjoyed when the trail got really rowdy and gnarly. But for most of the rides that I did, like the Transition Sentinel was just too much bike for me. I don't race enduro and I don't ride just gnarly tech trails all the time. I just like getting up in the mountains and riding. That is my favorite type of cycling. And these kind of bikes, the Niner Rip 9, the Specialized Stump Jumper, the Transition Smuggler, are just perfect for the amount of travel, the geometry. That Sentinel was just a bit too slack. A 63.5 degree head angle I think I had was just too slack for me for a lot of the trails that I ride. And I had a Rip 9 years ago, and it's just one of my favorite bikes. And about a year ago, I was on a Specialized Stump Jumper, 140 in the front, which is what this has, 130 in the back, which is what this has. And honestly, it was just perfect. Now, I like the Niner because of the spec. It's got 10 millimeters more travel front and rear, so it's 150, 140. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, what is a Smuggler like? Because the Transition Spur, which I own, is the best mountain bike that I've ever ridden in my career of mountain biking. And Transition just makes such good bikes. And so I really wanted to get on a Smuggler. Now, I just bought the Rip 9, so I was not in a position where I wanted to buy another bike. So I called Transition and I said, hey, listen, I would love to demo a Smuggler. And the crew came through for me because I'm thinking, you know, wouldn't it be cool to have a Smuggler and a Rip 9 at the same time to do comparisons? Now, this video is going to be a first look. And it's where I kind of talk through why I'm riding this bike, what I like about it, and then I show the components up close. It's, you know, for all of you bike nerds out there, it's just seeing this bike up close, and I'm going to talk about the components. Now, here's the deal. If you saw my YouTube short that I posted a few weeks ago, I said that, you know, this thing, it's a demo, but it's never been ridden. It was brand new. I built it up. And just a side note here, one thing I really like about Transition is the bikes are pretty much ready to go. You just put the handlebars on, do a few things, and you're riding. Not all bike brands are like that. So it's brand new, and the component spec on it is just so good. So this is the GX Axis build. It's very similar to the GX build with some upgraded suspension. So Performance Elite Fox suspension versus Performance that's on the GX build. And then it's got race face rims as opposed to WTB. Now, I'll go ahead and say that I weighed this bike and it came in without pedals at 30.14. That's actually lighter than I thought it was going to be. It's a pound lighter than the Niner Rip 9 RDO, but the Rip 9 has a 36 fork on the front, so 36 millimeter stanchions, and it's got 2.6 tires. So these bikes are roughly the same as far as weight. But I'm not going to do any more comparisons with the Rip 9 in this video. Those videos are coming later. I'm going to do standalone reviews with this bike and do a comparison with those two bikes because they're so similar. And honestly, I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm going to have one. If I sell the Rip 9 and purchase this one, or if I just keep the Rip 9. So yeah, that's the story. That's why I was so interested in a Smuggler. So I'm going to show the bike up close and just talk through some of the components. I'll show the frame first. So they've got some newer cable routing. So the cable routing goes more near the head tube versus the side. They still have channels inside. Now this bike came with the cables already routed, but they've got the channels inside. So all you do is feed it in from the top. You don't have to drop out the fork and it just goes in through the frame. So super, super clean cable routing. Now, unlike my Transition Spur, all the cables are internal. On the Spur, the rear brake cable is external. On this one, the rear brake cable is internal. So it's a matter of personal preference. I'm kind of neutral on it, but I just wanted to point that out. Also, unlike the Spur, this one has the horse link design. So it does not have the flexible, seat stay like the Spur that has no pivot in the back. This one has a pivot. And a lot of transitions are like this. My Sentinel was like this. So, you know, when you get to the longer travel, you kind of need that, like having a flexible seat stay. Now my stump jumper had a flexible seat stay, no pivot in the back, and I didn't mind it. It had a little poppy, playful feel with the suspension, but just wanted to point that out as well. And by the way, you can see the rear brake cable coming out right there, so it does stay internal. So head angle is 65 on this, and the seat tube angle, the effective seat tube angle on this bike is 78.6, I think. This is a medium. I'm 5 feet 8 inches tall, and medium transitions fit me really, really well. So you do have a place for a water bottle cage, which I will put on, and then you do have a place for a little tool, bolt-on toolkit underneath the top tube, and it's got their newer chainstay protector. So I'm not going to put my rubber chainstay protector. Now, I did put on my own frame saver tape, any place my heel would rub, and I tried it on the cranks. I'm probably going to pull this off because of this indent on the GX cranks. It's not going to stay in there. I even heated up with a hairdryer and it didn't really stay on. And since Transition is rider owned, they put a threaded bottom bracket on the Smuggler. This is a SRAM dub bottom bracket. So that's the frame. Let's move on to the suspension. So you've got a Fox Float X shock. I love this shock. I have it on my 9er Rip 9, and it's such a good shock. And also this bike comes with a 34 fork. Because it's 140, you can get away with a 34. If it had any more travel, a 36 would be preferable. But it's the Fox Performance Elite, and it does not have the Kashima coating. You know, no big deal. I don't notice a performance difference in Kashima. It just looks cooler, and it's going to be a little bit more durable. But I've had plenty of forks without the Kashima coating and never really missed it. Now talking about the suspension. So it comes with electronic shifting, like I mentioned, and it has this newer pod. I've used the older pod and I did not like it that much. This, I've already ridden it around the neighborhood and it feels great. I said in one of my videos recently that I didn't really like electronic shifting because I kept misshifting. This one I think is going to be a little bit more natural compared to the regular shift motion that I have on Shimano and SRAM. So SRAM GX rear derailleur, electronic of course, and this is the first bike that I've used with a universal derailleur hanger mount, so that's pretty cool. And that derailleur just, I mean, it just looks cool. Of course, it's SRAM Eagle 12-speed, and the front chainring on this bike is a 32. So the GX cranks, they look cool. You know, this little indentation makes it hard to put on frame saver tape. I like frame saver tape on cranks because my heels always hit the cranks and just wear them down. So I don't think that's going to stay on, but I'll give it a shot. Looking at the wheels and the tires, so this bike, the GX Axis, comes with race face effect rims. I've used these rims in the past. I like them. It's just a good solid wheel set. And then for tires, you've got a Maxxis Assegai 2.5 in the front. And these, by the way, came with tubes, but the bike came with valve stems and sealant. So I've already converted these to tubeless. And when I weighed the bike, it was after I converted it to tubeless. So 30.14 pounds without pedals and without tubes. The rear tire is a 2.4 Maxxis Dissector. I'm a huge Maxxis tire fan, so obviously very stoked that this bike comes with Maxxis tires. Wrapping up this first look video, talking about the cockpit. So it comes with an alloy 800mm wide anvil bar. Again, this is the GX Axis, and the bar is a good width. I like 800s, my preferred width for a bike like this. And if I were ever to buy this bike, I'm not buying it, I'm not selling my Rip 9. If I were, hypothetically, I would put on a carbon bar, most likely. And then it's got a one-up dropper seat post. Love this seat post, probably my favorite dropper seat post. SDG saddle, super comfortable. I've used these before too, and really, really good saddle. There's not a lot of saddles that come on bikes that I keep on, but this is one that I do. I typically change out a saddle just because there's a certain shape that I really like, but this is a saddle that will stay on this bike. Brakes on this bike are the SRAM Code Silver Stealth with the pad contact dial and also the reach dial. I've used SRAM Code brakes in the past. In fact, I had them on my Sentinel and they have incredible stopping power. So I would expect these are going to be great. This bike comes with a 200mm front rotor and a 180mm rear rotor. So that's my first look at this super sweetly spec Transition Smuggler that I'm so stoked to ride this bike. I'm gonna get up to the mountains in about a week and start my testing with this bike. And another thing that I'm curious about is how it feels on my local trails. The spur is perfect for my local cross-country trails. I'm curious to see how this is. Is it too much travel or is it gonna be just fine? We'll see. And then of course, I will be doing some comparisons with the Rip 9. Got choices. One of these will stay. The good news is they're both incredible bikes. The bad news is it's going to be a tough decision. So that's going to wrap it up for this particular video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and stay tuned because I've got some really good videos coming up on this bike. That's it for this one. I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.